Hi, welcome to the presentation, Annual Solar Geoengineering, Mitigating Yearly Global Warming Increases. I'm Dr. Alec Feinberg, and let's get started on this talk. This is a different approach to helping to reduce greenhouse gases with the aid of Annual Solar Geoengineering. This paper here is published in the journal Climate, and this reference here for it. And basically, this is this talk will be based on that paper. It's easier to understand. It's like an introduction to the paper, so you get a good overview for it. Some other references for the work that I've been doing, and we'll maybe touch a little bit on this paper as a part of its motivation. Okay, so just by way of definitions on solar geoengineering, in solar geoengineering we deliberately reduce the amount of solar radiation, sunlight that is, absorbed by the Earth, whether by brightening the Earth's surface or sun shading in space. So sometimes people call it solar radiation modification, so I think of it as an alternate name that occurs that you would use when we actually do the changes, or when we're talking about what changes to make. And the solar geoengineering is more of an engineering effort, so it can be more involved with engineering equations and things like that. So the idea of annual solar geoengineering is to reduce just enough solar radiation or sunlight just to stop yearly global warming increases. So why do we want to do just yearly and not full? So we are not trying to reverse all of global warming. We're only doing yearly increases. And the reason is because it's 50 times less effort. It's also less of a shock on global warming. So, and it's also incredibly difficult to reduce all of global warming at once. So the difference is we're probably looking at about 0.02, 0.03 degrees C per year that we're trying to reduce. So all of global warming is a little over 1 degree now. So that's a factor of about 50 times less effort. So in this case, less can be more. Now, all the way up to from 1972 to 2022, we noticed that the slope of global warming is that 0.02 degrees C kind of thing. So that's where the bottom comes from. But in 2023, we had a fairly large increase, and I think it's happening in 2024. So we'll have to wait for that data point. But in general, I'm worried that this is highly nonlinear and could be the start of maybe a tipping point. So we really do need solar geoengineering. And I don't think this is totally related to El Niño kind of activity. All right, so the purpose of annual solar geoengineering, again, is to stabilize global warming, stopping temperature increases each year so we have more time to reduce fossil fuels usage. It's not a replacement for fossil fuel reduction, it's just a great aid. So Earth is warming too fast, and after a while, we'll not be able to reverse it. We may be seeing the beginning of a runaway problem called a tipping point, and that is from that graph. Okay, so let's look at the contributors to global warming. So global warming can be simplified into forcing and feedback. So let's just quick definition of this too. Forcing is what we do to cause global warming, like we add CO2, or we darken the Earth so we have more energy in. Another thing of interest is in one of my papers, I didn't reference it here, but I was able to show that forcing goes directly as energy consumption. So the rate, that's actually the forcing rate, goes as the energy consumption rate. They're pretty much equal. So when you do it in a unitless way. Now feedback is the Earth's response to forcing. So for example, we have what's called a feedback loop. So a lot of things like that. So for example, the ice and snow melt. This darkens the Earth. This causes more warming, which causes more ice and snow to melt. So we get more warming, and that's called a feedback loop. It keeps like a running away effect. So there's other kinds of feedback, and I recommend to look at them on Google. One of the greatest problems is water vapor feedback. So this is the easiest to understand. Water vapor, by the way, is a major greenhouse gas. We'll talk a little bit about that. So the advantages of solar geoengineering compared to CO2 removal. Solar geoengineering produces fast results. It's also, a lot of people, even climatologists, don't seem to realize that it's 40% more efficient than carbon removal. So it's not related to fossil fuel legislation, which is a plus because of all the government issues. It reduces the greenhouse gas effect, so it also does that as well as so it will show you that, including water vapor. It's something also that we can all participate in by brightening the earth with cool roofs, roads, white houses, and white cars. So in other words, we can't easily I can't remove carbon easily from the air. Of course, we can buy a electric vehicle, and that would be helpful. But we can paint our cars white, for example, and that is directly an improvement. Why is solar geoengineering more efficient than carbon removal? So in solar geoengineering, three things happen. Where in carbon dioxide removal, only two things happen. So in solar geoengineering, for example, when we paint, say, a black roof white, we not only cool the roof, but we also reduce the greenhouse gas effect. So it's a 40% additional reduction. It also reduces water vapor, which is the strongest greenhouse gas. So how does that occur? Because we have less radiation coming from the roof, so you have less heat coming off, and of course greenhouse gases need heat to re-radiate. So you don't have that heat to re-radiate, so it does effectively the same. And it also causes some condensation. If you cool the earth, you're causing condensation of the water vapor, so that gets removed. Okay, in CDR we only do two things. We reduce the greenhouse gas effect, and this can also make the earth cooler and reduce water vapor. But so you get a feeling, you're starting to understand why solar geoengineering is actually a better option for mitigation. So why is solar geoengineering so important? Because it's the primary warming, is the initial solar heat that the earth absorbs from the sunlight. So that's where everything starts, where greenhouse gases are a secondary heat source. They re-radiate primarily heat, returning about 62%. So it makes sense that if we're trying to do mitigation, to look at the primary heat first. So you can make very strong arguments for that. All right, so let's look at this a little more in detail. Here's a hot spot, like a dark road, a man-made dark road, and or it could even be a mountain. But nevertheless, if we paint it white, so it comes in, the sunlight comes in. It's not affected by greenhouse gases because it's light, but when it turns into heat, greenhouse gases can absorb that. They can re-radiate. There's other mechanisms as well, but nevertheless, the end effect is that you get more return of heat to the Earth's surface. Now, when you paint it white, the sun just bounces off the white surface and goes into outer space. That would be the optimum situation. So you get two effects. This is no longer hot, and there's no more re-radiation. Okay? But if you do carbon removal, you're only removing this, so you're only doing the secondary effect. All right, so again, solar geoengineering is more efficient. We see that the greenhouse gases are a secondary heat source, not a primary one. When we do solar geoengineering, we reduce both primary and secondary heat sources. In carbon removal, we only reduce the secondary heat source. Solar geoengineering cools the Earth. It also reduces water vapor and the effect of the carbon dioxide. Therefore, solar geoengineering has less effort, and it's an immediate and stops greenhouse gas effect. And why is it immediate? It's like walking from from the sun to going under a tree, and it's shady, and you notice the difference in temperature. It's immediate. Okay, so there's three main types of solar geoengineering in my paper that I discuss, and the first is earth brightening, painting roofs white, cool pavements, bright buildings. There's some desert people that have looked at desert treatments, mountain whitening, hotspot cooling, all to reduce the amount of solar heat. Another method is called stratosphere aerosol injection, and this a lot of people misinterpret in climatology today. They think solar geoengineering is just this because it's just stratosphere aerosol injection, termed SAI, and so it has a lot of pushback. Solar geoengineering, but it's primarily because they inject particles into the atmosphere, say about a mile high, into the stratosphere to reflect some of the sunlight away, and people are worried about that. Now, sun space shading in outer space, blocking some of the sun way up in outer space from entering the Earth with large space mirrors or shading. Now, that is very benign, but it's very expensive and difficult to do. So you would not even notice that in terms of the clouds. It would not even be like a cloud in the sky. You wouldn't see. It would be hard to measure, but it's measurable enough, especially in the annual approach. So the aerosol one does create a lot of shade, and so there's a lot of farming issues and things like that. So I rated these from best to worst in that paper, and I find that earth brightening, if you go through this, is the most. It has the highest, has the lowest rating, which in this case is better. So 1 is better and 10 is worse. So the worst came out actually to be SAI, stratosphere aerosol injection, the particle one. And the space mirrors would be also very good, but it's expensive. So this is related to lots of different things like cost, feasibility, and things like that. Okay. All right, some annual solar geoengineering estimates. It's very difficult. You need to, if you want to make brighter surfaces about 30%, then you're talking areas that you're going to do on the Earth. You're going to have to, on average, a minimum of about 0.06% of the Earth area, which is a huge amount, 120,000 square miles. And if you do 60% brighter on average, it's proportionally lower area, about 0.03% of the Earth has to be attended to, and that would be 60,000 square miles. So every country has to participate. In my paper, I suggest that it should go as the size of the country, which makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, now here's just an overview on the space mirrors. They have a little shading way out here in outer space, and notice you really can't, it really is not going to block the sunlight, so you wouldn't notice it because the sun would get from here to there, but it does remove some of the energy getting to the Earth. And there's a number of papers on this. Stratosphere aerosol ejection, again, this is not very high up, it's like a little above the clouds, and it would create a lot of shading, so these particles like sulfur dioxide, calcium carbonate, injected into the stratosphere. And part of the problem is that they don't last, so it's not a lasting thing. There's a lot it's a yearly maintenance. So for annual solar geoengineering, not easy to do because you have to keep adding to it every year. It has to be cumulative. Some arguments against solar geoengineering. This is just an excuse not to do fossil fuel reduction. So that's a popular argument. There's a petition by 500 scientists against doing solar geoengineering, but this petition was incredibly poorly written. It gives solar geoengineering a bad name. They really only want to reduce aerosol. They don't like aerosol injections. But nevertheless, they're including everything, including earth brightening. Now think of it. We're already doing earth blackening. We're painting the earth black with roads and black roofs and dark cars. So we're really already doing negative solar geoengineering, and it's not a good thing. So the arguments for it is we're not improving with the carbon dioxide. We had a 40% increase in 2023 over 2022. Solar geoengineering works. It quickly cools things. It reduces the greenhouse gas effect. Also, we are already doing negative, as I mentioned, solar geoengineering. New studies show that urbanization is causing up to 13% of global warming. And in my paper, the third paper that I started with, it verifies some other authors' work, as well as theoretically it shows how this could be. So this requires solar geoengineering. We are, if this were true, obviously, the best way to get rid of that would be with painting the earth white, especially urbanizations. So we are likely seeing tipping point behavior in 2023. So we have an immediate situation now. So again, we are doing too many things wrong. We're painting the earth dark colors with roads, roofs, and buildings. We have no population control. In the U.S., we're having a loss of abortion rights in the U.S. So zero in one of my papers, I show that I'm trying to get published right now. I show that zero population growth would cut global warming increases. So this is yearly increases in half. So that means we would go from about a 0.02 to 0.03 degree rise every year. We would cut that in half to 0.01 to 0.015. So 40% increase in CO2 from 2023 to 2022. So we went from 2 parts per million increase to 2.8. Wars are another thing we're doing wrong. We're generating huge amounts of greenhouse gas. We're also darkening the earth, so there's more solar input, solar heating. So plus, when wars are over, the rebuild causes about 42% more carbon dioxide. So the real enemy we should be is global warming. That's everybody's enemy. Soon we will not have a planet to fight over. All right, on my paper on heat pollution, which is in the reference in the second page of this presentation, it shows you that urbanization is causing 13%, and I break that down into impermeable surface issues and anthropogenic heat release, which is just when you're heating your home or using air conditioner. So it's energy consumption and energy heating. So half goes to solar heating. So solar heating from hotspots, creating hotspots on the earth, and general hotspots from construction and our energy use causing heat. Now, this is an unfortunate situation up until what's called the recent publication by the International Panel on Climate Change group, which is a governing body. Their fifth amendment recognized up to 10% of global warming could be due to urbanization. So here we had 13%, and I also have references to a China study that's true. Now there comes the sixth report, and they say that urbanization is not doing anything to contribute to global warming, but they do recognize that it causes a lot of heat in cities. So they only suggest it's a local effect. So this is completely wrong, but I could not get, and I gave them plenty of information, but they chose to ignore it. It's very difficult to communicate with the IPCC. I'm not on the staff there. Can you and I stop global warming? So yes and no. This requires areas of about 0.03 to 0.06% of the Earth to whiten each year. So this is incredibly large. We can certainly brighten our rooftops and buy white cars. This can be helpful and also gets us away from bad practices. So annual solar geoengineering requires that large effort, and it's going to require help from NASA, SpaceX, Canadian and Chinese, European space agencies. Much work needs to be done on the space mirror, sun shading, on the annual approach, as well as I think the development of AI drones for brightening the Earth to paint it. So in order to do Earth brightening, it's very difficult. I have a podcast. I suggest you listen to that. It talks about urban heat islands and global warming best solutions. So a reference for that. So how do we implement solar geoengineering? Earth brightening requires AI intelligent drones. And they would probably be needing to work 24 hours a day. We'd have fleets of a couple hundred drones, each country, depending on the size of the country, for doing earth brightening. And the problem is where do we find the land to brighten? So that has to be brainstormed. So drone painting is feasible. We can do that, and it would require this artificial intelligent drones. So in order to survive, global warming for the human race. We need to have population control. These are my requirements. Reduce energy consumption worldwide. Stop negative solar geoengineering. Ban black roads is one of my websites, banblackroads.org. Not seeing it here, but I think it's somewhere in my presentation here. And so that also includes cars and rooftops in the banblackroads.org website. Building sites. We need AI drone development for Earth brightening. We should also be brightening mountains, and I know that's controversial, but we need the area to paint. So we need our cooperation by space agencies. We need to do fossil fuel reduction, less CO2. And here's a chart that came up by these authors, and they said without solar geoengineering, it's going to take a very long time for mitigation, if possible, and that if we do just keep using oil, we will not get anywhere near that. But if we add solar geoengineering, depending upon when we do it, we'll get some mitigation. That's reduction here. So what can you do? It's not easy to do carbon capture. We push back against black pavements and roofs, push back against black cars. Here's my website that organizes this. Organize for Earth brightening. Work on what you can do. Force governments to do both annual solar geoengineering and carbon removal. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to the presentation. We went kind of fast. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll be able to come up with some ideas.